So every time I teach a series on sexuality, I want to put resources in people's hands. There's only so much that we can talk about in 6 weeks. There are only so many things that I can bring up and that people will remember. And definitely one of the best ways for our students to engage in this topic of sexuality and for our families to engage in this topic is to read good books. And so I always want to recommend good books for people to read, and I want to make sure that you know that these books are available. So one of those books is this one. It's Sex God by Rob Bell. This is really kind of a theological understanding of sexuality. That sounds a little dry, but it's not. It's a very entertaining is not the right word, but very motivating and inspiring book to understand exactly how God created us to relate in sexual ways. So this is a book that I usually recommend for high school age students to really think about what it means to be a sexual Christian person, to be a person made in the image of God, by God, to be sexual, and how we bring those things together in harmony. And so it's a fantastic book to help our students and parents as well just come to a place of having kind of a theology or a godly understanding of sexuality. Another great book is this one called Relationships. It's written by Les and Leslie Parrott. They're a married couple out of Seattle, Washington. Relationships, written as actually a textbook, a college textbook for freshman class that the Parrotts teach at, I think, Puget Sound University. And it's about all things to do with relationships. It's a godly perspective on relationships, and I mean any kind of relationship. Anytime two people are trying to live in harmony together, whether it's brothers and sisters or sons and parents, or daughters and parents, or friends. And it does, of course, get into dating and some of those cross-gender type relationships. But it's a kind of a primer of all things to do with relationships. A fantastic book. I usually try to get some of our younger students, junior high, early high school, to read that book. And so that's a great book for folks who are just kind of getting into the complicated nature of relationships in general. These two books kind of go together. They are Every Young Man's Battle and Every Young Woman's Battle. They're written as part of a series. Those books are books that are really about sexual purity and how do you, practically speaking, set up boundaries, set up guidelines, and train yourself to live a sexually pure life. So those are really important books. I believe every student of our church and the other church needs to read those books. Right? So parents, please make sure that at some point your kids have those books in their hands, because they will struggle to control themselves in a sexually appropriate way. And those books are about how to set up physical boundaries in their lives, how to train yourselves to be sexually pure. They include some of the theology behind it, but they're really about the practical nature of how do I keep myself from acting in ways that are not appropriate. The last book that I have, I'll flash up here on the screen. I'm all out of hard copies right now, but I've got more on order and should be here this week. It's called Questions You Can't Ask Your Mama About Sex. It is kind of what it sounds like. It's kind of a no-holds-barred approach to answering some questions about sexuality. It comes from guys that have started a ministry called XXXchurch.com, which was a ministry originally founded to show the love of God to those in the pornography industry. It's grown into a very, very large ministry of sexual healing, especially for those trapped in sexual sin. This book is basically just a series of questions that people write into them, ask them via email and other things. How do I deal with this? How do I deal with this? And how do I deal with this? And they answer those questions very straightforwardly, very plainly, also rather humorously. Our kids have been reading this book, or several of our teens have been reading this book and gotten a lot out of it. It's very engaging. It's not the world's most complete book on sexuality, but it's maybe the world's easiest or most readable book on sexuality. And so I encourage everyone to pick that up as well, because it takes a head-on, straight approach to answering some really tough questions about sexuality from a godly perspective. And so I encourage that one as well. All of these books I have for $5. Some of them I have limited copies of, and so that's when I run out, I probably run out. So there are other books out there on sexuality, but these are ones that I find really helpful. Most of our sexuality curriculum has come from some form or combination of all of these books. And so I encourage everybody to take advantage of the opportunity to get them Parents, make sure your kids read a book. Make sure that they take the next step of engaging their mind differently and doing that. And I encourage you to read it with them. It'll be awkward, maybe. It'll be a little uncomfortable for probably both of you, but it's important. This is the conversation that you must engage in right now, and so I encourage you to use some of these resources as a way to do that.